My guest today is Joshua Sitta, the co-founder and CTO of Sittadel, a cybersecurity company specializing in 24/7, 365 managed detection and response services. With a focus on enterprise-grade EDR solutions, Sittadel provides comprehensive cybersecurity monitoring and incident response. Before founding Sittadel, Joshua served as the Director of Enterprise Security Architecture at SouthState Bank, where he built a robust in-house cybersecurity program that safeguarded billions in assets. He brings a deep expertise in protecting organizations from modern cyber threats. Thank you so much for being with us on the show today, Joshua. It's a real honor to have you.
Christopher, thank you. I like to think of myself as a security defender, so what a great place for me to be.
Awesome. Yeah, it's been a long time. I think we were talking way back, and I want to say 2020. You were still in the early stages of starting your MDR, and LimaCharlie had just completed its first round of hiring. How have things gone, and how's that growth story been?
So if we were talking in 2020, you were catching me in between tears. If I wasn't crying when we were talking, I was crying right beforehand. That was kind of a rocky time to start a service-based company. But yeah, the MDR portfolio was really great. Let me quickly explain what we do here at Sittadel. The only service that we were performing back in 2020 was we were the MDR middleman for folks who were too small to afford like the minimum contract floors for enterprise MDR tools. So we've had a go-to-market partnership now with Red Canary for the 6 years we've been together. And we had this mission, like let's put everybody on the same playing field. The $40 billion bank should be able to have the same security as the little corner store market. It's not fair that they're priced out because they can't afford the tool. Mm-hmm. So we made a path for those tools. We aggregate small businesses together. But then immediately we realized like you can't just deliver the tool. So we also have to do the work as well. And we have to figure out how to make it scalable so that, we're not, again, pricing people out of being able to get their security outcome. So that's what kind of thrust us into this weird, this murky gray area between service company and tool outfit. But since then, we've just found increasing places that we can use to make businesses more secure without really having to increase those costs quite so much. These have been going well.
Okay, awesome. And you mentioned it was a hard time to start your company. Was that because the COVID pandemic had just sort of kicked off?
Yeah, Christopher, when we were planning the launch of Sittadel all those years ago, 100% of it was built around the fact that anytime we would go out in the community and we would talk about cybersecurity, somebody would come up to us afterwards and say, hey, can you help me do what you do at the bank? Can you help me do that at my little shop? And we didn't pivot from that strategy. So we're like, yeah, we're just going to get that next in-person event, where can I speak? Where can the team speak? Where can Shafinia come and talk about cloud security or Garrett talk about Microsoft security? And the answer was nowhere. So we were just booking empty theaters. We literally did presentations to 0 people in the audience. And I'm happy to see that live events are back because that's definitely breathed a nice bit of fresh air into our sales.
Yeah, I know that was a weird time for us too. We'd sort of bootstrapped for the first couple of years and then finally got some funding or received our seed funding or pre-seed funding. And we were ready to go to conferences and go shake hands and do all that stuff. And that was right when COVID hit. So I think it was probably almost 4 years from the time we started the company until we were able to go attend a major cybersecurity conference, which is, made things interesting. It's a long-term stealth.
Yeah. Uh-huh. Can I tell you the most frustrating part though was all of our back of the napkin ideas for how we were going to build this company. In 2019, we were like, well, it's got to be fully remote. There's no need to have the office anymore. This whole company is going to be built to operationalize security without having to sit behind a corporate firewall. And we actually started that in 2018. It took a full year to kind of figure out how we were going to do that. And then 2019 is when we began. We only had 6 months in the year that we were actually performing our services, though. And then 2020, all of a sudden, we're not special. The world is working from home. This is no longer a strategic differentiator. Everybody knows how to do security without the corporate firewall. It's like, that was a big stinger for us.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, we were remote by design from the beginning. So at least when the pandemic happened, it didn't change much for us. And my wife had actually just had our second child. So she was home on mat leave. So I think it was pretty smooth from my perspective. I know a lot of people really struggled, but didn't hit too many bumps on our side.
I'm that weird guy, though, that kind of needs an office. So work from home, boom, created a lonely Josh.
A lonely, sad Josh.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. So I'm always interested in how people started working in technology. How did it start for you? Did you grow up using a computer, or was this something you found later in life?
I started using a computer around the launch of the first Diablo video game.
Okay.
And I was using, I'm going to say, Alta Vista to try to figure out how to get better at Diablo. And through the bunny trail, I ended up in these bulletin board system, BBS.
Yeah.
These BBS networks launching me over into IRC channels where I'm talking with people about Diablo. And as people started walking me through, like using a hex editor to modify local character data, I started to learn the difference between client and server relationships. I was 10, 11 years old, something like that. All I wanted to be was good at Diablo PvP, but through the course of trying to figure all that stuff out, all of a sudden I became this kind of a whiz kid. Back before, Christopher, you remember like before you could Google the answer to every IT question, back when computers were scary, like installing a driver was going to take you 4 hours to figure out how to get done. During that time, just like being the person who sets out to try to work through a manual, that was enough of a differentiator to be like an IT person. So at 11 years old, I'm setting up school networks, and my first job, I was working on Y2K, making servers Y2K compliant. And it just it led from there. Spent some time in the arts. I was in a rock band for a while, and then, that went as good as you think it went. And that put me right back in IT. And when cybersecurity kind of developed as a field, it was sort of a natural fit for me there in financial services.
Oh, interesting. Yeah, it's funny how many people I speak with who started their cybersecurity journey learning how to modify video games and stuff like that. So it's definitely a well-worn path into this career.
Yeah, absolutely.
So you guys are a managed detection and response provider. Has the industry changed since you began? Has your company evolved to keep up? What's different from 2019 to 2024?
Yeah, that's a good question. EDR has gotten a little weird, I think. EDR has... it's just crept into so many different things. You got companies out there like Webroot who right on their website define EDR as any endpoint security control. That's not the same. You got companies like Huntress out there who are really good at detecting methods of persistence. And then they just throw the letters EDR on it as if they can monitor behavior beyond that. And it's not quite there. Malwarebytes, which is great at prevention-focused, signature-based antivirus, just starts adding in EDR. The EDR space is like so convoluted with who a comprehensive player in kind of information that you're going to get out of that tool is, and everybody else who is just trying to latch onto that name. So when we started all those years ago, EDR was still kind of the new kid on the block, and like there wasn't a lot of people who knew what it was. Christopher, I bet you spent a bunch of time explaining the here's what EDR is. This is how LimaCharlie does the thing. But now I think people know EDR as a term, but they don't understand necessarily the underpinnings. This one says EDR, that one says EDR, which one is different? And that kind of brand confusion creates some really big headaches. we see, which we try to answer 2 or 3 questions every day on the cybersecurity subreddit. And almost daily, somebody there is saying like, what EDR tool should I use? And you'll see people like jumping in and they're like, oh, you got to use this team, this brand. And you get that like, the rah CrowdStrike is the best, or this other one, or the next one. And then somebody comes in right behind them and they're like, no, I used CrowdStrike, or I used this other one, and here's the problem I had. What I think we're seeing is the tool availability is like increasing, but companies are struggling with adoption more than they're struggling with the like actually acquiring some of those tools. Mm-hmm. So figuring out how we fit into the marketplace is like not necessarily just bringing a tool, but offering that expertise to actually get you over to the outcomes that you're looking for. Do you agree? Do you feel like the EDR landscape has just kind of exploded into?
Yeah, for sure. And I think that's been going on for a long time. EDR kind of became the flavor of the week, the way zero trust sort of lost its meaning as it got used in all the marketing material. But I do find there is a maturation in the industry. And this is sort of part of where we pegged our whole thesis years ago, was that eventually cybersecurity is going to look a lot more like software engineering, in that people understand the problems at a fundamental level and they want the tools that allow them to create solutions for the problems they have, instead of going to a vendor that has, this all-in-wonder package product that's going to magically make all the threat actors go away, right? Because that's just not a thing that I think is going to carry us into the future.
Yeah, if I'm building an enterprise and I'm trying to make sure that my security operators are really, really good at what they're doing, I see that one guy's got experience in using the first-party managed service by the EDR that he built, by the EDR that he used at his last job. And then there's a guy who's got experience in running LimaCharlie, and he's done the detection engineering. And this is a guy who built the security and understands it. Like this is the person that I can trust to be an expert on the technology as itself. I'm going to get better outcomes out of the person who really understands it, who has that background and that expertise. Mm-hmm. But I think that maybe now, in folks in our position, you mentioned that we're an MDR provider. MDR providers can be really great at blurring the line between when the EDR has accomplished its work and when the service, the MDR portion has kind of taken over. Mm-hmm. What I think you get left with is these weird edge cases where somebody will say, just in the pre-show, we were talking about Mimikatz. You mentioned if I'm using something like LimaCharlie to detect Mimikatz, okay, great. I've got the malware. I see it. I know what needs to be done about this. I can ban it. I can remove it. I can do whatever I need to do about this malware. And if I'm the kind of person who has dialed in that security, I know a lot about the threat. Mimikatz. Okay, we're stealing passwords here. Did they get any passwords? I don't know, but maybe I just want to respond. I want to reset those passwords as a matter of extra caution.
Good process, yeah.
If I'm the first party EDR monitoring service, if I'm a tool like CrowdStrike, which has the EDR built in and the monitoring as well, I see it's got Mimikatz. I respond to Mimikatz, and that's my scope is locked to the tool. There's no extra contextual information that I bring into it. So the outcome is, what happens to those passwords? Do they ever get reset? Don't know that they do. Did my team have the awareness to? Did the MSP, did the MSSP, did they drive an alert to tell my guys, hey, we've only remediated the workstation threat. You've still got account compromise that's in scope here. Those sorts of questions, I think, are really what is separating the folks who are using EDR tools, but still having compromises, still getting things like ransomware, still having cybersecurity losses, and people who are just trusting a service that their scope is going to be enough to accomplish a whole breadth of cybersecurity concerns. Mm-hmm. I'm sorry, was this called the Cybersecurity Soapbox Podcast?
We try and stay off the soapbox, but sometimes it's inevitable. You mentioned a bunch of different vendors there. You guys work with multiple EDRs. Is that part of how you deliver your services?
Yeah, we're not quite tool agnostic. The ones that we're supporting today are Carbon Black, which has some problems because of the Procom association, with CrowdStrike, which has some problems because of the way that they kind of lock their scope to the tool. And then we're also using Microsoft Defender for Endpoint, which has some problems because of how complicated the implementation could be.
Yeah.
So as long as the EDR tool can give us a complete record of things that have happened, if it has enough telemetry that's there, then we can assure our outcomes. So long story short, we work with a bunch of EDR tools, but all of them got problems.
Yeah. There's no perfect solution, right?
Yeah.
What makes a good relationship with a technology vendor? Like, how did you come to choose CrowdStrike, Microsoft, and Carbon Black? Is that something your customers bring in with them, or do you have those relationships outside of that?
We have some customers who bring their own EDR. SentinelOne is also on the list for the BYO EDR tool. But where it really comes from is we just had this tight go-to-market partnership with Red Canary. Red Canary supports a couple of tools, and those are the tools that we started with.
Okay.
As we've gotten to see more and more of what Microsoft Defender for Endpoint has really been able to accomplish, it's made a lot of sense for us to do some security engineering in that space. And then that's broken open a whole level of cybersecurity architecture in the Microsoft environment that has certainly kept us busy.
Okay, and so you build part of your stack yourself. You're building integrations with these tools, and
we're not doing a whole lot on the tool side, but we're adding in the context for when things turn red, what are all of the actions that need to be taken care of?
Right.
So we're a monitoring service that does more than just observe and report. We're the monitoring service that remediates and then also identifies other areas where there might need to be some homework. If we've got the benefit of seeing the kinds of workstation incidents that you're having, well, then we can also make some informed decisions about the kinds of training that your folks need. So we might inform your security awareness training program, and we make our scope very blurry. We just try to add security outcomes across the relationship wherever we can.
Okay, awesome. Is there anything you wish you'd known before you started your MDR company?
Yeah, man. Yeah, there's some things I wish I would have known. I wish I would have known, Christopher, how hard all of this is. When we were doing it for the enterprise, we had very clear success criteria. Our goals were very clear. We had tools and budgets. We had 9 to 5s.
Paycheck was guaranteed.
A guaranteed paycheck. What a thing.
Yeah.
But we were fully in the pocket. We knew from start to finish what every day was going to look like with some small variance. Maybe it's going to be this kind of a threat. Maybe it's going to be that kind of stuff, but it's still going to be threat remediation. Now we're in this crazy, literally every week is different. We'll get pulled into, we have a portfolio of energy companies now. 2 years ago, we didn't know anything about energy. And now all of a sudden we got some people who are experts on that because of just their attack service looks a lot different than a financial service provider or the healthcare portfolio. And there's maybe just one thing I could have known. It was how broad being an MDR provider was going to make our experience and how many different things that we were going to have to juggle all at once just to do the one thing that we really set out to do, which was threat management.
Yeah. Was there anything you'd have done differently if you were starting again?
Yeah. Christopher, I did not navigate the additional challenges that running a business has on a person. I did not navigate those challenges personally very well. You go from being asked to make sure that alerts aren't getting missed and drive a security program forward for one organization to having multiple businesses who are relying on you to execute your work perfectly every single day, every single night, round the clock incident response. You're also relying, you have families who are relying on you, not just your own family, but the family of the people who are setting out to do this with you. Their paycheck is riding on you, and all of these different non-security pressures. It was all too much for me. I kind of lost my mind. I had a real difficult bout with mental illness. And the one thing that I should have done differently was when I decided with my partner to start a business, I should have enrolled in therapy right then and there. Preventative maintenance along the way. I think it could have helped me keep my sanity without going too far off the reservation.
I actually really appreciate you sharing that with me. I think it was about 3.5, 4 years in for me, I started to fall apart a little bit, and it's not something I've talked about a ton publicly or whatever, but it changed my whole understanding of mental illness and the types of things that a person can go through when facing all these pressures and stuff like that. So I think it's definitely something leaders like us should be talking about more in the public sphere, because it's real. And if you're facing anything like that, like, talk to folks, ask for help, go see a therapist. I can't recommend therapy and counseling enough. If you need medication to get through something, there's no shame in that. Do what you got to do. It's worth it, and there is a way through it for sure.
Yeah. Therapy is kind of magic because it's this neutral space where a guy can say, hang on, have you ever heard those words come out of your mouth? Do you hear what that sounds like? And they can pull you to confront some issues without making you feel like you just did something wrong. In regular life, people don't talk about your issues unless you did something wrong to them. And it's hard to hear those messages when somebody is mad at you. Yeah.
Do you have any advice for founders in this space who are struggling with scaling their business outside of going to therapy?
I got to tell you, Christopher, this is my honest truth.
Yeah.
As often as we try to give back in some of the like free enterprise entrepreneurship programs that are around here, I have the slides for it and everything. The talk is all about convincing yourself not to start an organization. Don't start a business. Don't make a new SaaS product. This business, this entrepreneurship, it gives you so many reasons to quit that it is only right for the people who have tried to make themselves quit and couldn't.
Yeah.
If you're on the fence about it, just don't, man. Just don't. That's the honest truth.
Yeah, and I think one thing that was definitely a surprise for me was, like, it's going to take longer than you think. These are long journeys. These are not, I'm going to flip my idea into this super big success. It's like, it's a grind. And I'm sure there is the overnight success that stuff does happen. But I think the endurance is how you succeed as an entrepreneur.
Yeah, there's a certain amount of stubbornness that you need to recognize the world telling you, like, we don't want this thing that you're doing. We're getting the same outcome some other way, or we're perfectly fine with some other, maybe it's not as good as what you're doing, but it sure is easier for us to get it there because it's fully figured out. It's off the shelf and we can get it right now. If you can't see the world telling you those things and know it's time to quit, okay, then become an entrepreneur. That is the perfect recipe. I will say that despite talking so negatively about it, I am thrilled with how much personal growth that it has put me through. And like, we've been together for 6 years now. It's been really good for 2 years. We've got a lot of freedom and flexibility. There are budgets. Sure, there's a bunch of clients now who need a bunch of different things, but we've had really, really good success with the team that we've built. The Sittadel today wouldn't be anything, of course, without my co-founder, without Trofenia, but also Garrett, who is our Microsoft security guy. We've got Elise, who leads the client relationships. We've got Katie, who holds everything down. We've got pen testers for this. There's a whole team that has to get strung together. So maybe if I could answer that question again, if I have advice to the founders, it's just that you don't want to do it alone. Build that team as quickly as you can.
Yeah, no, for sure. That's great advice. Do you do anything to balance between, providing a high quality service and keeping costs in check? I know especially with some of these sort of tier one tools that you mentioned, the cost can be quite high. So how does that all come out in the wash?
Yeah. Well, when we were trying to make cybersecurity more accessible for people who couldn't afford the floor, the big companies still say that's a great mission, but we still have a floor. So who's going to pay the bill? And we had to come up with all that. And we pretty much put it all on black. We bet on ourselves that we were going to be able to put out cybersecurity at a cost that everybody could afford without having that same grace by the people that we were having to pay in order to make that happen. But we saw adoption drive really quickly, probably because it would have been the end of the company if we didn't have adoption specialists. But all of a sudden, we needed to be really, 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 really good at driving adoption for our tools. So we started focusing on customer retention. If we can identify all the reasons that people churn from a service provider, we can reverse engineer our way back into that. And I promise this is relevant to cost. We were looking at the reasons that people might leave an MSSP, like, well, I was paying them and I had a problem, so I needed to switch them. Or I'm just not having a good experience talking to them. They talk to me tech when they need to have better bedside manner, or I don't understand what's going on, or I don't see evidence of what they're doing. There's no accountability for the black box of services that they're providing me. So we just approached it from the opposite perspective. Let's make sure that we are always providing really, 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 really thorough documentation. And even if they don't want it, in those edge cases where somebody gets pulled into a lawsuit or something like that, they'll have it, and that's going to be the stickiest customer ever. And once we started driving forward our adoption, our client retention, once that was the most important metric to us, planning out the customer portfolio became really, really easy, because to this day, we don't have any salespeople. 100% of our business comes through referrals. We do a really good job with a company that we've been working with for 4 or 5 years. When we start adding together all of those nickels and dimes and all the referrals that those people have brought us, then the upfront costs, the big tool contracts, the labor costs to get a skilled team, all of those things have been really, really, really good purchases. They're just not a good purchase in the calendar year. You got to spread that out between 4 and 5 years before it starts to make sense.
So do you guys leverage automation in your processes at all? Is that a big part of how you keep costs down?
So we do. There have been some places where we have dropped some costs due to automation, but the problem is our line of work has to be 100% accurate 100% of the time. You can't have blind spots. You can't have automation that should do a good enough job reviewing telemetry, make all of its determinations there. So 100% of the critical operations that we serve, whether that's the MDR side or email security side or whatever the service is that we're providing, 100% of the automation escalates to a person. We've been able to do that. We've been able to leverage automating workflows that escalates to humans who have reputation at stake to have fewer humans. So we've had fewer need for architects and engineers. However, it's also created a platform for our architects and engineers to be more invested in their work, because they know that their success or failure is going to follow them as they mature in the company.
Any thoughts on AI and how it could fit into an operation like yours? I know we kind of touched on this a little in the pre-show chat, but I'm curious what you think. Yeah,
we've done some interesting trials of AI. We had an AI salesman for a while that didn't make any sense. We never went live with it because it didn't feel right. AI is like 80 or 90% of the way there. But it's never going to be the full experience. You can't trust all of the decisions that it makes. You can't just have it interact directly with your clients, especially if client retention is the number one metrics that you monitor in the company. But we have seen a lot of we have over 300 knowledge base articles for how we do Microsoft security procedures that are in our knowledge base. AI has written 80% of those words, and then it gets steered. That last 10 or 20% is steered by an expert. I don't know that we're ever going to be able to be more comfortable with any fully automated services or things like that. But the main idea at Sittadel is we use AI for the rough draft, but people for the final copy.
Very cool. Is there any emerging technologies that you're excited about that you see in the MDR space?
Christopher, I feel like when I started in cybersecurity, there was a tool shortage. You had threats that were risks to cloud services, but there weren't any good cloud security tools, or even endpoint security hadn't been solved, kind of yet. Now I don't feel like we're in the same environment. I feel like there are so many people who have really, really good tools out there that meet every possible use case. When we talk in when we take in conversations like these and we focus in on MDR, there's services like Sittadel's. There's the first party services for those EDR tools. There's the option for a business to get the same outcome by trusting a really enterprising engineer who's with it enough to make excellent detections in LimaCharlie. And you can start at LimaCharlie without any cost, right? That's what Maxime says on all the ads.
Yeah, it's just like AWS. So all the characteristics where you can just come on with your credit card. I think we would free tier of 2 sensors, unlimited, but you can scale as you need without any contracts or anything like that.
So today you can start getting access to these outcomes at no cost. You have all these different options for how you get there. I'm less and less excited about new technologies, and I'm just more and more excited about new approaches. You mentioned zero trust there for a second. There's a bunch of new zero trust technologies that are out there, but you can't add zero trust. You can't add nothing.
Yeah.
You can't add a lack of trust to something, right? So what I am excited about is there are approaches now where you can secure something by design. You can remove trust from the implementation of something, and that gets very interesting very quickly.
Yeah. I think the landscape is such that new companies starting today can really build a solid security foundation, where I think the burden really lies on a lot of these legacy companies that have been around since before cybersecurity was a thing, trying to backfill their security footprint, which is, often a patchwork of machines that have never had any oversight, and who knows what's going on there.
Yeah. And if they grew by acquisition, like we see in banking, a lot of consolidation between banks, then you might be 3 or 4 years into owning another organization that you've acquired without folding in together the resources. And now all of a sudden you've doubled your attack surfaces. How do you back into something like zero trust for a brand new network that just came online overnight?
People who care and a big budget. I think those are probably two requirements there.
I think you're right.
All right. This is the last one I have for you. It's the one I ask of everybody that comes on the show. It can be as wide or as narrow as you want. Do you have any predictions for the future of cybersecurity?
I'll tell you the thing that we're seeing right now. We are seeing LLMs, AI, large language models, ChatGPT. We're seeing GPT wrappers get made for initial access brokers. We're seeing people run emails through LLMs to suddenly change the game for what phishing emails look like. There's a class of phishing email that we all make fun of, and that is the Nigerian prince email. And I can't believe you fell for this.
Yeah.
And I think that security practitioners forget that that's part of the scam. We're qualifying out the people who are reasonable, so that if they actually believe that I'm the prince of Nigeria and I have to put my money in your bank account, I'm going to get them to be able to do whatever they want. That's a class of phishing email. But then there's these highly sophisticated attacks. sophistication has never been easier. And now that it could be done programmatically for one of the cheapest subscriptions that an initial access broker can pay for, where suddenly you're crossing language barriers, you're localizing content, you can add jokes into your phishing scam, and it becomes really, really, really believable, far and away better than somebody who might be trying to attack you from the other side of the world, trying to localize whatever quip that they're putting in their pretext. LLMs changing the game of phishing emails. That's the prediction that I have.
Yeah, that's interesting. I recently saw a whole class of emails, phishing emails that leverage DocuSign that are very convincing. And I think we're going to have to get smarter about the way we educate our staff and put limits on things they can click.
That's tricky. We've tried to approach this problem. We tried to approach it from AI. What if we could tune a GPT wrapper to be able to detect the indicators of phishing emails? And we had a rough draft of our new managed email security service, which was it's going to be AI powered, like all of the other secure email gateways are introducing today. And we found that it's the same as before. You can't be highly accurate by using an LLM. So this new process that we've just entered the market with, so far it's having really good adoption, is we overtune the security of the control. So more things are going to your quarantine, but then we add scheduled security advisors to go through the quarantines, the human labor that is responsible for somebody to be operating in their expertise, spotting what is an actual good, legitimate email that needs to make it through you. And the DocuSign thing keeps coming up because there's so many DocuSign emails that are important. They're critical. You can't get paid if you don't get that contract signed. And that's exactly why the bad guys are using that as their attack vector. If we can put both in the quarantine, but make sure that we are constantly having a security advisor scoop the good ones out for you, then we're having a really accurate email security outcome. Once you get past all the technology that the phishing emails are using, the technology that the good guys are using, and you get back to good old-fashioned expertise being applied to an email quarantine.
Awesome, Joshua. Thank you so much for coming on the show today. I really appreciate the conversation, and it's nice to reconnect again after all these years, and so happy to see you guys having the success that you are.
Thank you, Christopher. Thanks for having me and tolerating some of the diatribes that I went down.
Yeah, no, it was great. I think this is one of the longer pre-show conversations I've had, and there might even be one after a little bit. So
this is the pre-show? We haven't started?
All right. Take care, sir.
Thank you, sir. All right. See ya.